I don't know what your count is for any of you weavers, but I think I've counted about 224 Chilkat blankets in museums, about which close to 50 are in the Smithsonian. I know there's more than that. There's about 45 in Tlingit hands. Just one. That's in Peabody, Salem. There might be a picture of it on here. Let me sit at the screen here.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add to Harold's statistics.
Is that the front?
A couple of years ago, I did some research in the East Coast museums, like the ones in Harvard and Salem, Washington D.C., New York, Boston, and I came across, out of 5 museums, I came across 13 Chilkat robes that were woven by Jenny Tlanaught. And how I knew that they were her weavings was her signature, but not just her style. She does her noses a certain way. Every weaver has a certain style of how they do their eyes and how they do their noses. And but also they have their signature on their robes. And the signature, when we come across a photograph here, the signature is on the bottom left-hand corner and right-hand corner of the robes. And you'll see a checkerboard of maybe yellow, blue, or black and white. And like on the very bottom left-hand side and right-hand side, in this case it looks like black and yellow, right? Okay, that's the signature of the weaver. Jenny Tlanaught is yellow and blue checkerboard. And I knew her style of weave, and it was kind of neat to come across some of her weavings in the museums.
I'm glancing through these real fast here. I've found about 8 of this pattern. This one's in the Alaska State Museum. This one is, according to museum records, I don't know where pause is there. According to this one, the museum records, this was the first full-size blanket made, according to their records. This was collected by Emmons.
Last year, this is interesting because last year a man out of California contacted me about this particular design, and it was of course you'll see some designs that are basically the same, and then they'll change certain elements from that design. And he contacted me about this design. He was an elderly man in his late 80s, and his father had a Chilkat robe that was very similar to this design, and he asked me if I would be willing to reproduce the design because the robe was going to his nephew and not to him. And because it had been in the family for about 65, 70 years, he wanted a copy of it. Sometimes that happens. Somebody inherits a Chilkat robe, and there's a conflict of who gets it. So the way some people solve that problem is to just get a duplicate made.
By the way, this is listed in Emmons as a killer whale. My grandmother had 2 similar to this And then I think Boaz or Swanton identifies it as a grizzly bear with cubs. These look like the American Museum and Natural History collection. I've seen some with fur across, and I heard one person say if it has fur on it, it was meant to be danced in. I guess the ones without fur across the top were meant to be in museum collection storage cases. It's really amazing when you're in a museum collections room when they start opening these cases. Actually, it's sort of sickening. Because if you've ever been to the memorial parties around here and see all the objects out, imagine what they used to look like when all these objects were still here in our hands. Some of these, however, I believe the records show they were collected from the Nishka or Simsian.
I recommend that, if any of you guys go to any of the museums back east, and you're looking at any and all of the collections, even just a small portion, that you go with somebody else, because it's kind of overwhelming. It's emotional, and it's nice to be able to have somebody to lean on and share your thoughts and feelings and ideas with.
This is in the American Museum of Natural History too. This was recorded as having been made by a Mrs. Gonnet. You ever hear that name?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Looking at these pictures, you can just see from the picture that these weavers are warped. He's absolutely right. Back in 1983, when I took an introductory course to Chilkat weaving with Cheryl Samuels, it was her first class in Ketchikan. It's May 1983, and there was, Dolores Churchill and Anna Ehlers and Ernestine Hanlon and Vesta Johnson, and anyways, there was about 10, 12 of us in there, and I was the lousiest weaver, the most tightest weaver, the most uptight weaver. My weaving was so hard that when I threw it across the room, I stomped on it. I threw it across the room at the window. It just about broke the window. It went thud. But one of the things that happened during that class was how I noticed how all the women were slightly off. They were all a little tweaked, like warped, okay? And I thought, I'm not going to weave. I'll be danged if I want to be associated with these women and become one of these guys. And I swore that I would never weave again. And then the interesting thing is, 2 years later, Jenny Tlanaught had this workshop in Haines in 1985. And I love Haines, and I was invited to come to Haines, all expenses paid. So I went there not to learn Chilkat weaving, but to be in Haines for 2 weeks. And I got hooked, because once I met this elderly woman and I saw how she wove and how fast and accurate she wove and her whole character, I was totally inspired. And that's what pulled me back into Chilkat weaving. This is a wolf. This is from the wolf house in Sitka.
Yeah, it looks like a wolf.
This shows up in some historical photographs. This was sold by the widow of a former caretaker, and there's a repatriation claim in on it. It comes from the family of the wolf house that has the multiplying wolf screen. This is called Kudas nach ein Kudas. There, the multiplying wolf Chilkat tunic. It's the same. It's adapted from the image that's on the multiplying wolf screen in Sitka. The head of this house and the head of the clan is Andy Gamble. I'm so glad you're recording this, because there's a counterclaim on this, and somebody fabricated history about it and how their family owns it. But as I was going through the family trees and the history and the names, everything ties Andy Gamble's family to this tunic. And right now we're having to go through a counterclaim in the NAGPR process, which I might talk about in a little bit in our NAGPR session later, but this does belong to the wolf house.
You can tell that it's wolf because the two figures down at the bottom, you'll see the mouths and the tongue, but the prominent nose is what gives this away as the wolf.
Hey.
Well, I have a prominent nose, but I'm not wolf.
Do you ever use any of the natural colors anymore, or the way the Indians got their colors?
I haven't used natural colors yet because I want to do it right, and according to Jenny and Agnes Bellinger, Jenny Tlanaught and Agnes Bellinger, the best yellow, I want the best yellow. I don't want just a weak yellow. I want the best yellow, and the best yellow comes from a 9-month pregnant woman, either that or a newborn baby. And a lot of people are not willing to give up their urine for that because they think you're going to do witchcraft on them, or somebody's going to do something negative, and it's going to come back on them. So it's hard to collect the urine from those sources because of people's fear. And so the next time my daughter is pregnant, because see, I wasn't here to collect that. I wasn't in town at the time. But the next time that she's pregnant, I'm going to collect her urine. And one of the other ways that you collect the 9-month, the younger the baby, the better the color of urine. And I want that brilliant golden yellow. I don't want the weak yellow that's from a robe that's been around for 100 years. I want that brilliant yellow. And so what you do is you take that the wolf moss and you put it in their diaper. And the wolf moss is a natural antibiotic against diaper rash. So that's how you collect the urine, is you just collect it on that wolf moss. And of course you collect number 1. If the baby has done number 2, you don't use that. Yeah.
In 1967 in Haines in the weaving workshop with Jenny Tlanaught, that became my job. They sent me around the neighborhood looking for people with babies and asking if they would collect some baby urine for me. The looks on people's faces that I got really strange. And I only found 2 people that had babies that
They'd lock you up for that.
No, I know.
Does anyone else have another question? It seemed like somebody. Yeah, Nora.
What do you use for the mordant?
What do we use for the mordant?
Yeah, for the wolf moss.
I think the combination of the urine and the wolf moss is the mordant. And so, yeah, you can use the copper to get the green. And, you have to let it sit for about 4 or 5 months, the copper in that urine, to get that color. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight. Yes.
So Does wolf moss grow here in the southeast area?
No, wolf moss is in British Columbia area. It's on the other side of the mountains. It has to have a drier climate. So what we do is we trade, somebody on the other side, collects that, and then, we'll give that to you. It's a different kind of wolf moss than what we have here. It's it's kind of stringy. It's hard to describe, but it does. It has almost like a fluorescent green to it. I don't know how to describe it, but I have a big bag full. I've been collecting it over the last few years, and it's nice to have friends who are Canadian, eh?
This blanket, there used to be an identical one like this in Angoon. It was called Yesh with a Shai Keet, raven married to the killer whale. I've seen pictures of that one. It has bright green where the blue is, and it's bright yellow. It was a pretty nice blanket. Back when this blanket was sold, a bottle of whiskey cost $50, and the caretaker really wanted a drink that night, and he sold his blanket for $50.
This blanket is the one in the museum here now?
Yes.
Originally, my dad found the pattern of this blanket, and I don't know if this is the same one or not, but he brought it was in the office to either a cannery or one of the commercial company offices in a warehouse, and it was nailed on the wall. And my dad said that the Chilkat dancers would like to use the blanket for the dance group, and so in the early years of the group, they got the blanket, and then in 1967, when Doris Kuybergruber was there doing the weaving workshop with Jenny Tlanaught, she put new side fringe on it and new fringe across the top on the bottom. And this looks like that fringe might be that vintage just because the colors are different for that overlay fringe and the side fringe. So I know that after she did that, it was about 4 years. I wore the blanket for a number of years, and then the people that owned it took it back once it was all fixed up, and we never heard from them again about it. But then Harold said this was in the museum now, so I looked at the old pictures a couple weeks ago, and it looks like the same blanket.
Alaska Packers.
Yeah, I think that was it, yeah.
See, this hair has a real prominent nose, but that's not a wolf. This one looks more like Kilroy or Gonzo off the Muppets, maybe.
It could be something else, too.
Clarissa. Anna Ehler's made this one. Oh, there's her name right there. This is in Gold Belt. I think it's on exhibit over in the Gold Belt Hotel still. This is Chief Shake's killer whale blanket. This was made by a weaver named Kach Edeyat, a Ganakhteri weaver. It was made around 1890 for Chief Shake's the 6th. This was repatriated from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science and was brought out at a party in Wrangell last year. This looks like it's at the party. Is it? Clarissa, you take this picture?
No, I don't think I did.
This was made by Mary Willard. I have a picture of her sitting by this with her weaving this. I don't know if you have that picture.
No, I don't.
This came from Angoon. This was sold in 1944. It's now in the Minnesota Museum. Minnesota Historical Society. Do you know where this is?
No, I don't. But it's interesting because that's the photograph that the guy sent me, and that's the actual image of the robe that he wanted me to reproduce. Oh, that's the robe that I'm weaving out there right now, and it's a Chilkat robe within a Chilkat robe, and what I'm doing is, instead of, because I changed things around on it, obviously, because the mask on her face at the top, that's green now instead of yellow. And what I've done is, this is Jenny, it represents Jenny, and she's wearing a crown at the top of her head there, because she's like queen of her knowledge. And then she's an eagle, so there's eagle depicted on the sides. And then she's holding up a Chilkat robe. And the robe is a raven woman, because her apprentice was a raven. And so what I'm doing is the part that's her, around the actual robe, the robe within that robe, will be done with yellow and green, and then, and then the robe, the smaller robe, will be done with yellow and blue colors. It's to signify the generational change. I'm weaving on that right now. That's the robe that I'm working on out there. Did I do this design? Yeah, I did the design. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's just a picture of a robe that I've done. It's just a silkscreen print. Because I did the silkscreen print years ago, shortly after she passed away. And I'm finally weaving the robe.
This blanket was also made by Mary Willard. There's a similar blanket it's in Ottawa. That looks like it was made by her as well. There's also a Chilkat shirt with these figures like this. That's in, well, it's in a Canadian museum. Then a similar blanket like this just sold at auction about a year ago. It didn't have this pattern, or this one, but it did have this, and it looks like it was made by her as well. And that sold for $85,000. This was made by Anna Brown Ehler, and at her dad's memorial party, this was cut up in sections and given to guests given to different people at the party. Is this Jenny's?
Looks like it.
You know where this is?
What's that?
You know where this is?
I don't know where that one is. Is that the one that belongs to the Sheldon Museum in Haines?
This might be the new one they just got back.
Oh.
Remember the one they bought that I showed you, and then they bought, then it was going to be sold, and then somebody bought it, the Curtis family donated it to the museum in Haines.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that has the letter of Providence, and they don't have that at the museum, but I took a Xerox on it when I was holding it. And she says which dyes were which color, which were commercial and which were natural. And she says that
she said that it was all mountain goat wool, and that it came from up on the mountain above Cluckwan and stuff. So it's a handwritten letter. And I don't know why the museum doesn't have it yet, but I mean somewhere it's still in the loop. But I at least took a Xerox of the letter to start with.
This is in the National Museum of the American Indian, as are these leggings. A couple of years ago, we repatriated an apron from the Minnesota Museum of American Art. And I took it to when we brought it back home, I took it to one of our dance practices to show the clan leaders there what would be coming out soon. And I put it back in the box. The Chilkat apron was made from a cut-up Chilkat blanket. And the museum the apron had been sold about 1930. While we were dancing, I looked over at this guy wearing a Chilkat shirt that was made from a cut-up Chilkat blanket, and this family had had that tunic in their family for years, and I'd seen it over the past 30 years being used in different ceremonies. And he put it away, and I was sitting there thinking about it, and I said, "Bring that shirt back out." He brought it back out and laid it on the table, and I pulled the apron out and laid it down beside it, and it was from the same blanket. These are images from the National Museum of the American Indian. Look how they did the teeth different on this side. This one compared to that one. This is called a killer whale chasing a seal. Lee Heinmiller and his family have one like this. It's really old. I almost fell over when I saw that blanket. It's really fine weaving. This one's a newer one than the one Lee has.
There's a picture of this in one of Bill Holmes' books of the one where it folds out to double pages, but it was also hanging over, image of it hanging over Chief Shake's body when he was lying in state. But the pattern board for this blanket, the drawing of it, is in Emmons' book. And I was comparing the 3 or 4 different pictures of this blanket with the one we have. And this is only a weaver's interest, I'm sure. On the dorsal fin that's folded out to the side on either side, there's the big line down the middle of it, vertical, that's the black stripe. That's the solid one there. Well, on the one blanket in the Bill Holmes book, that stripe is missing on the right-hand side, and the dorsal fin is the same length, but the blue part of it is the ovoid on the right-hand side, when you're looking at it, is longer because that black vertical stripe is not there. And I thought, wow, that's a big mistake for a weaver to do. And then when I looked at the picture in the Emmons book on the pattern board, the half of the pattern that's there on the board is the left half of the blanket. So where they made the mistake was on the side of the blanket where the pattern board is blank. So I don't know, it's just a weird tidbit, but it did make it easy to distinguish between the different blankets.
When I was in the Bancroft Library, I was reading through Olson's notes, and he didn't mention anything about the signature tie-offs. He talked about weavers having their own unique style of weaving, and he said the signature of Dane Cosat, a weaver from Klukwan, was 2 pieces of spruce root about 1 inch apart down the center. I know where there's 2 blankets that she made, and I would like to check those out to see if those 2 pieces of spruce root are in there. One's in a museum in Vancouver, and one is here in a clan collection here in town.
I just wanted to refer back to Lee Heinmiller's comments about how one side had the black bar and the other side didn't. As a weaver, sometimes we do make mistakes, and we have to, we kind of look and we go, oh my God, that's a mistake. But you're not going to take it out after you've already woven 2 or 3 months down the road. And I've done that, and where I don't take it out. And other times you've measured wrong. your one side will be, 10 inches over here for this one element, and the other side was 8 inches. And how do you accommodate to that? Well, sometimes you will leave out a section, or you'll make that black bar, the line that comes down, you'll make it a little thinner, or, whatever you do, there you are, you're adjusting. But as Chilkat weavers, we will make mistakes. And as an artist in Chilkat weaving, as an artist in any kind of medium, if you are able to fix your so-called mistakes, that's part of the definition of being an artist.
That's when you would say some of the weaving got woofed out.
Jeez. 100 years from now, when they watch this videotape, the checkerboard. I'm not sure why they have the checkerboard down there. Maybe that is the signature that signifies.
This is a pretty awesome blanket. It's big and it looks like it just came off the loom. It's bright. It's pretty. The museum acquired it around 1910, I think. Pretty nice beard, huh? Look at that. There's an identical tunic to this in the Seattle Art Museum. This one's in the National Museum of the American Indian. There were some people in there. This is where you get into problems with people just making up things as they go along. It was identified as coming from the dog salmon clan. So someone said this is the dog salmon head, and here's the tail, and these are the eggs of the dog salmon. Well, this is the bear head here. There's the ears, there's the arms, there's the body, there's the hind legs. The shirt belonged to the bear clan, and they turned it over to the dog salmon clan as a payment for a death. That's how the dog salmons wound up with the bear tunic. Payment for a death is called kanawuwedu. That's how my grandmother wound up with one of the blankets she had. It was a payment for a death that her uncle had picked up when someone got accidentally shot. If someone was working for you or you accidentally killed from somebody, even if it was an accident, you had to pay for that person's death. And that's called kanawuwedu, payment for a death.
That little grid that she was asking about on the bottom of the photograph, a lot of times when I was in college, an anthropologist laid a grid in for scale, and they were either centimeters or inches or whatever, so that you could translate the photograph into that just by measuring those on whatever size you were looking at, and then knowing that they were an inch or a centimeter or whatever.
That's what you were looking at. This?
Yeah.
Harold, were you talking about the thing that my mom bought? Or not? No? Oh, okay.
This blanket is in the National Museum of the American Indian, and there's one also in the Alaska State Museum that has the green fringe. Like this. See the green fringe there? And it also has the checkerboard. Both blankets have that. The one here in the State Museum, like this one. And it's also the same color green that's in the Chief Shake's Killer Whale Flotilla blanket. There was one like this from Sitka that sold at an auction 12 years ago. I think estimate was around 70,000 what it would sell for, and it sold for 497,000. But they put the prices on it. We don't.
Is that US dollars or yen?
U.S. dollars. There was one blanket in here, I passed it up, it was removed from a grave top. Sometimes you see pictures of blankets hanging over somebody's grave, and somehow these collectors thought they could just remove them from a grave. That's how they wound up in museums. This is also in the National Museum of the American Indian, and I think it has the same tie-off that's on the Chief Shake's killer whale blanket. And this was also collected in Wrangell, and is also a killer whale. There's the killer whale head, the fin, the tail. Who made this one? Do you know?
I don't recognize it. It looks like a weaving that Anna may have woven. These are, of course, the modern day robes of Raven's Tail and Chilkat. And of course this one's a modern one. I don't know who made these. Does anyone know who made these? Does anyone here in the audience recognize any of these images of the modern day ones? I was just wondering if, going back to those modern pieces, the cedar bark with the raven's tail in it, that was a modern piece. And then the one that we thought might have been Anna Brown Ehler's robe. I just wondered if anyone knew for sure whose robes those were.
I think this was made for Carl Heinmiller. Carl Heinmiller ordered this from Jenny Tlanaught.
This is in the book, The Artist's Way, where they list a number of Jenny's pieces and stuff, and the photo of it says it belongs to the Sheldon Museum, but it's just because we have it on loan to them. She put the red in the mouth of the raven there, and I think it's number 19 or 14 in the book, but my dad just ordered it from her in the late 50s, and it was $500. And he complained and whined about the fact that it was going to be $500, and when he'd first come to Haynes, he could have bought a full-size blanket for $50, or a frog blanket was $100, and the price was up to $500 by this time. But that one in the Sheldon Museum, the other photo that they got was one for Irma Snobble, and it's listed in the book too, and it was in 1956, so 3 years before this one, and it was $300. So the price in the 50s sort of moved from, $150 to $500 over that period of time.
Clarissa, back to the Raven's Tail. Is Cheryl Samuel still active and working among our people?
The question was, is Cheryl Samuel still active in working among our people in teaching the Raven's Tail weaving and Chilkat? Yes, she is. And, she's helped. Of course, she brought back the Raven's Tail weaving. And she began teaching Chilkat again a few years ago. Yeah. And there are many of us, you know, the native people who are teaching the raven's tail and the chilkat. Yeah.
This was a very old blanket that was returned. This was, the man who had this died in 1853. All the fringe is missing. This is just laying over the top of another blanket. This is really fine weaving on this. Have you seen this one, Clarissa?
No, I haven't. And you can see where they have the light green overlay fringe coming down on the bottom there. There's the fringe from the warp, and then when you finish weaving your robe, you also include an overlay fringe that doesn't have any of the cedar bark in it. It just is the straight wool.
This is another one Lee has. Lorraine repaired this one. And make a comment about the clan conference we heard. Cheryl Samuel is not Alaska Native. She's not American Indian. And I've heard some comments about why so many white people. No, they don't complain when a Mexican weaves or a Hawaiian weaves or a Japanese weaves. But when the clan conference was starting, I'll go ahead and say it because I think I told Peter already. Somebody asked why Peter Metcalfe was on there. And you've seen Peter around here running himself into the ground during this conference. A native woman said, "Why is he on there? He's white." I said, "Well, he's setting up the videotaping. He's setting up the program. He helps with the teleconference. He gets out the publications. Do you want to do it?" End of conversation. This is another one. Lee, stand up. This guy has more Chilkat blankets than most villages have. I just wanted to put you on the spot, Lee.
This one my dad bought from Alton Engstrom. Every time my dad would think about buying another Chilkat blanket when he would see one for sale, my mother would tell him that she was going to go to Europe before he spent any money.
Which she never did, but he ended up buying the Chilkat blanket. This one my mom found in the Juneau paper, in the little weekly dial or whatever it is. Alton Engstrom was selling it. It was $9,000. It said Chilkat blanket, $9,000, good shape. That was it, you know, the little free ad. So my mom said to my dad, "Well, there's a Chilkat blanket. Why didn't you buy that?" So he traded in a CD and bought it for his retirement. And I told him that he made more money after buying a Chilkat blanket than he did after putting his money in the bank. And of course, we still have the Chilkat blanket, and the bank doesn't have your money anymore. So. But that one, we're still trying to decide what the little figure in the middle is at the bottom. It shows in other blankets. It's almost like, you know, between the split head of the killer whale there, it almost looks like a little baby eagle or something like that. Nobody's quite sure what's it supposed to be, but it shows up in a couple other blankets. And the little face in the middle there with like the two eyes, the beak, and the mouth almost, depending.
Isn't that the tail?
Well, it could be, except theoretically the tail's at the top, upside down and split, you know, like the dial of a normal diving whale blanket with the body line there. But unless we ask Emmons, he'll say it's a bear or something.
I think it's a puffin. The whale is going after a puffin. According to Nora, who's back here, she says that she thinks it's the nostril. And Ben says it's a prominent nose. Oh, can you go back to that one, the close-up? Okay, the close-up of that circle of the, forward, go forward again. That one. Okay, I just want to comment on this. In Chilkat weaving, we have the weavers, which are just 2 strands, and then we have braids, which are 3 strands. And in this, if you could just point to the braids there and how they're, yeah, those are all braids right here. The braids are the 3, you know, of course, any kind of braid is generally 3 or 5 or 7 strands. In this case, it's 3. And you'll notice how the yellow is a slightly different color than the yellow braid. The outline is a slightly different color yellow than the actual woven part of the robe of this particular design. And one of the things that we do as one of the tricks of the trade, and it's something that I learned from Jenny, was in order to keep track of the braids not mixing up with your weavers, you use slightly different color yarns for your braids separate from your weavers.
Look at that pile of blankets.
This particular raven's tail robe has sea otter warp. That's yeah, and you can kind of see the light brown. That's the skin side, and the fur is on the other side. About 20 years ago, Kathy Rado started one of the under the direction of Cheryl Samuels, had done a sea otter fur raven's tail robe.
This is the one from Angoon that I told you about. This was a previous caretaker from the one who sold it. This is the one who had it on the side is John Nelson. I saw this on the laser disc that Bill Holm put together. If you've ever, I don't know if anybody can find a laser disc player anymore, but Bill Holm put a collection of Northwest Quarter artifacts together. It's pretty amazing. Has about 13,000 images on it. This was a Chilkat shirt that sadly is no longer in existence. The herring rock blanket. This was repatriated back to the Kikseti clan in 2003 from the National Park Service. This depicts a rock. This was in the, somehow the weaver's names got mixed up. That was said to have been made by Anna Claney, but this was made at the same time as the double eagle blanket the Shungukedi have. And in that book it says 2 blankets were ordered by Sam Hopkins, and Sam Hopkins had the double-headed eagle blanket, and his wife had this one. There's also a picture of Jenny Tlanaught holding this blanket.
Well, it looks like Jenny Tlanaugh's work. And, you know, the signature is on the side there. However, she mentioned that her auntie who taught her had, like, what, let's see, 16 squares, and Jenny had 12. And of the checkerboard.
Looks like we're back to the beginning.
We were looking at that one with a heart in it the other day in the Juneau Museum. And yeah, in the middle of the eagle there, the one with the heart.
That one?
That, and Mildred Sparks made a pendant for my mother of an eagle, and she beaded a heart into the middle of the eagle like that.
And her family said that there's a few other pieces in the family that she made, woven and otherwise, that have the heart in there like that. So I don't know if that's something that she might have woven or not, or if it was, you know, a family tradition thing or not from the Connectedi. And the killer whale shirt that you said was no longer in existence with the 4 killer whales, that pattern board is in Emmons' book from as being in Cluckwan originally.
Yeah. I passed it. I didn't intend to sit up here. Thought Clarissa would be sitting up here, but I was trying to get back to this picture of that big.
Did you want me to come up there and sit
There it
by
is,
you?
there it is, there it is. I just wanted to say this. All these, how many people in here weave? So all you others who want to weave, you can look at this picture and see you got a lot of fringe benefits, okay? That's enough. Well, I'm going to head over to another session. We have a repatriation session coming up. We brought 3 objects back from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, which will be in Ballroom 3, I guess. But I don't have any more to say. Clarissa?
You didn't want to talk about the origin migration of
You know,
Chilkat?
I could not find my papers where Louis Shotridge wrote about how the blanket came. The apron came from the Nass River through the Queen Charlotte to Wrangell up to Cluckwan, and he had the names of the people associated with it on that journey. And I heard about that apron. It was the first weaving that they had, that they took apart, put back together. And 3 years ago at a party in Cluckwan, they brought that apron out. I took some pictures of it. It's an amazing little piece. The warps and wefts look like embroidery thread. But there's a conference in 2 years. I'll have those papers by then. I just could not find them. I even wrote to the museum and asked for those papers back because it was really interesting on how it detailed the journey from the Nass River up to Cluckwan. And contrary to the last conference, it did not originate in the Queen Charlotte. Thank you very much. But I'll look for that, and when I get that, I'll send that to anybody who's interested in getting it. You can just contact me through Chilkat and Haida, and when I find that, I'll type it out and send it out to the weavers or anyone who's interested in reading the journey of that apron.
Does anyone else have any questions here on the topic? We will be, there's a group of us out there in the lobby, as you've seen. We will be demonstrating and being available for any kind of, talk or demonstrations on Chilkat weaving. We'll be there till about 12:30 today. Okay?